Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
She's been jailed for murdering babies.
It's sick. It's sick what she did.
But some experts say her convictions are unsafe.
I worry that there is reasonable doubt. In fact, in some of the cases, a lot of doubt.
We investigate the controversy over the Lucy Letby case.
I don't think that because you can't explain something means that Lucy Letby was guilty of assaulting those babies.
We hear from the prosecution experts who are under fire.
I kept looking for alternative causes. What else could it be? What else could it be? But I eventually came to a conclusion, no, it must be this.
And we reveal new evidence of other possible crimes.
Do you ever consider that she may be innocent?
No, she was as guilty can be.
Two minutes to air.
News package 6. Yeah, okay. All right, lovely. Thanks. Bye now.
Manchester Crown Court in July.
I've got 10 seconds. OK.
And a convicted serial killer has just been found guilty of another terrible crime.
Lucy Letby showed no reaction at all when that verdict was given, but the family of baby Kay, her parents, sat quietly and then broke down as the news arrived that the nurse had tried to kill their daughter. Off air.
I've been covering the Lucy Letby case for the past 6 years.
So if there's clarity from the court, it'd be very helpful.
It's a story that's hard to comprehend. A likeable young nurse who was found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 more at her original trial last year.
You're watching BBC News. Here in the UK, nurse Lucy Letby has been found guilty.
For months, there were restrictions around reporting because of the second trial. Now, the evidence from both trials is being challenged.
Often left out of discussions on Letby is that the neonatal unit that she worked for was understaffed, underfunded, and full of quality control issues.
It's not just online commentators. Experts are raising serious questions too. Each new doubt, more pain for the families.
Could they have got it wrong?
Well, I'm pretty sure they did get it wrong.
There are no witnesses, there is no motive.
There is limited, if anything, any direct evidence against Lucy.
Oh, Lucy, is it?
Yeah. Lucy Letby has been sentenced to life in prison, but no one saw her harm a baby, and there was no forensic or CCTV evidence.
Could you take a seat in there for me, Lucy?
It's a case that divides opinion like few others.
Have you ever covered a case like this before?
I don't remember one which has provoked this kind of noise and reaction. It's been crazy.
I've written a book about Lucy Letby with my producer, Jonathan Coffey, but we still don't agree about everything.
I had a nagging discomfort even during the trial. The fact that no one saw her do any of this stuff, it was entirely circumstantial.
You know I don't share that discomfort to the same extent. Please don't forget that 14 days she spent in the witness box was really instructive. She squirmed, she got stuck, she got confused, she got herself in knots, she tried to be cleverer than the prosecutor. It was a disaster.
I change my view on this case every week. I mean, one week I think, yeah, she's definitely guilty. And the next week I feel a real deep discomfort and worry that possibly somebody who's innocent has been put in prison.
It's a vast case with many complex allegations. We're going to examine just 3 of the main doubts that have been raised about the evidence. Starting with the statistics. This document played a key role in Lucy Letby's convictions. It lists the incidents in the case, and the X's show which members of staff were on duty when they happened. One nurse was present all 24 times.
This column of X's next to Lucy Letby's name was one of the most striking bits of prosecution evidence, but it's been dismissed as misleading by some statisticians. They point out that the prosecution selected which incidents to put on the list, so it's hardly surprising that their suspect was present at every one.
The jury was told there were 2 suspicious incidents when Letby wasn't at work, but they weren't included in the grid.
Well, we have multiple concerns about the compilation of that grid and its effect, its impact on the case. What precisely was the definition of a suspicious event? Was it fully objective? In this question of selection, this is absolutely crucial.
I mean, the jury, for example, weren't told about probability.
Absolutely.
They were shown the grid and just told this is where she was at the time.
Absolutely. And the prosecutor made good use of that. Almost every time he stood up, he reminded the jury of this fact that Lucy was always present when these adverse events occurred. And that was then the environment in which they heard the rest of the evidence.
But is the grid really the problem? If there was undisputed medical evidence that 24 crimes had been committed, then surely the fact Lucy Letby was present each time would be damning.
What if there were 24 incidents with absolute proof that these were crimes? We wouldn't be questioning the grid then, would we?
No, I agree.
So isn't the issue here really about the science that convicted Lucy Letby rather than this grid?
Yes, I believe the issue was about the science. If the medical evidence was absolutely convincing, this would be rather a clear-cut case.
Much of the criticism of the scientific evidence used to convict Lucy Letby has focused on one man, the prosecution's main expert witness. He reviewed all the medical evidence for the babies in the case.
I went through them all and I thought, oh my word, there is something highly suspicious here. These babies should not have died.
I mean, there are people out there loudly saying this is a miscarriage of justice.
That's entirely up to them. The evidence that led to Lucy Letby being found guilty was very compelling, very consistent. Babies who were stable and in her sole care collapsed and died. And they shouldn't have collapsed, let alone died.
A major critic of the prosecution case has agreed to give his first television interview. He's the medical expert who advised Lucy Letby's defence team.
What do you want to achieve from the interview?
Well, as you know, he was the single most important person who didn't speak in court during that trial.
The more the scepticism comes to the fore, the more I'm dying to hear from this guy. Don't you think?
Yeah, totally.
The expert has seen all the medical notes of the babies and he wanted to give evidence, but the defence decided not to call him. So Lucy Letby didn't have any medical experts supporting her case.
Are you both happy?
I'm happy. When you found out you weren't going to be called as a witness, how did you respond?
Well, I was both surprised and concerned because I didn't think the jury had heard the whole truth. Personally, I don't think she had a fair trial.
Even though the decision not to call you came from the defence team?
Yes.
Presumably it was Lucy Letby's decision, ultimately, not to call you.
You're right, that the final decision is made by Lucy Letby.
Does the prosecution science stack up for you?
There's elements which don't. There were significant areas, a fairly broad range of areas where I came to different conclusions to theirs.
Are you telling me it's your belief that an innocent woman has gone to jail?
No, it's not my belief, but it is possible that an innocent woman has gone to jail.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it does keep me awake at night.
Lucy Letby has already been refused permission to appeal against her convictions in the first trial. But now she has a new lawyer. He's planning to take her case to the Criminal Cases Review Commission next year.
She's not guilty.
You're sure of that?
Yes. Yes. Listen, I'm working night and day on this case. If I thought for the moment that she was guilty, I wouldn't be doing this. My argument is that I now have expert evidence from leading neonatologists, toxicologists, biochemists, anaesthetists, pathologists that contradict the evidence by the prosecution.
The most controversial scientific evidence in the prosecution case is that Letby harmed babies by injecting air into their blood. That could create an air embolism, a blockage in the blood circulation caused by an air bubble. The prosecution experts said X-rays taken after the deaths showed there was air in the baby's blood. We're on our way to meet one of them.
Have you been to Guernsey before?
No. Stunning. It's a world away from Manchester Crown Court, this.
It's the first time the expert has spoken about the controversy surrounding the case.
She is one of the key scientific medical voices in this trial. And really, her reputation has been under attack.
It feels like a real moment now that she's decided to speak out. So are you plugged in already?
Yep, I'm plugged in. I just checked.
You're happy? Oh, it's there.
It's there.
Great.
John said he was happy.
Why did you come to the view that babies had collapsed and died because of air embolism?
The babies were stable beforehand, showing no signs of illness, and then underwent a sudden and catastrophic collapse. And that's vanishingly rare in the neonatal world. You just virtually never see it. So having crossed off all the likely things, you then have to look at unlikely and rare and unthinkable things like air embolus. I kept looking for alternative causes. And so, you know, I kept going back, what else could it be? What else could it be? But I eventually came to the conclusion, no, it must be this. It must be air.
The prosecution said the signs of air embolism were clear. They included sudden and unexpected collapse, failure to respond to resuscitation, and strange skin discoloration. The medical experts raising doubts in this programme aren't saying Lucy Letby's innocent, but they're highly critical of the prosecution's air embolism evidence.
I've seen the anguish and pain the families and parents go through when their children pass away. And this has been a massive personal dilemma for me. I'm one of those experts that's expressing the doubts, but I do feel this is a matter of conscience.
Tariq Ali hasn't seen the baby's medical records, but he's one of 24 experts who wrote to the government expressing concerns about the case.
When a baby collapses unexpectedly, you have a list of differential diagnoses, and on top of that list is the most likely thing. It could be infection, and so air embolism may be amongst your list, but it'd be right down at the bottom. You can't exclude air embolism as the cause of death, because it could cause death, but it wouldn't be one of your likely diagnoses given the circumstances. And you certainly couldn't say it is air embolism years after the event. I would think that's impossible.
Babies don't suddenly collapse, go from being well to collapse with infection. You get a slow decline, or you get some warning signs before the baby might eventually collapse.
But does that not make it really a theory as opposed to a proven explanation?
For me, it was more than a theory, because it fitted with how other people have seen babies with air embolus behave.
Very little research has been done in this area, but the prosecution used an academic paper from 1989 to support its case.
It studied the effects of air embolism in babies, and what it described looked like what the medics on Letby's unit were seeing: sudden and unexpected collapse and strange skin discoloration.
Some of those rashes seemed to match the findings of the research paper. And there was one distinctive rash, pink on blue skin, that research suggests might be proof of air embolism.
What we had on a number of occasions was a stable baby who suddenly became unstable, crashed, failed to respond to resuscitation and died. And where there was compelling evidence of air embolus backed up by X-rays, skin changes.
What would you say directly to sceptics who are arguing that air embolism is an unproven hypothesis?
Well, I disagree with them. I disagree with them. Babies don't suddenly drop dead.
The author of that 1989 study says none of the rashes described by the hospital medics are enough to prove air embolism. And the expert who advised Letby's defence at trial says there's no proof the air seen in the X-rays got there while the babies were alive. He also disputes the idea that the babies were stable before they collapsed.
Phrases such as "the baby was really, really well" were given by the prosecution expert witnesses on several occasions for several of the babies. And it was my view, and is my view, that they weren't really, really well. They had signs of significant illness.
Okay, so these are the babies that prosecution experts either said or suggested were harmed by air embolism.
I mean, this is like pretty much half of the babies in the trial.
Yeah. I think this allegation is where the case gets particularly tricky. We have experts coming to these cases years after the fact, trying to piece things together based on quite imperfect research and knowledge, and coming up with a fine theory, but is it proof? Is it absolute cast iron proof?
I think you're craving absolutes. And this is messy, this is difficult science. And this is about what happened, not just what the experts said, but what was observed on the ward by the doctors, by the parents, with these babies.
But is it beyond reasonable doubt? That's the question.
I get it, but the trial wasn't built purely and entirely and solely on this evidence. It wasn't built purely and entirely on the word of one or even two experts. It brings you back to the point that this is a big picture. And you start pulling out individual threads, and on their own they look weak. You put it together and it's persuasive.
Lucy Letby was also found to have violently injured babies, as well as injecting air into their stomachs and force-feeding them milk, all of which is now being challenged. But the most damning evidence against Letby involved another method of attack: insulin. The prosecution successfully argued she attempted to murder two babies by adding insulin to their feed bags, and that their blood tests proved there was a poisoner in the hospital. The first baby had very high insulin levels. If the insulin was natural, you'd expect to see even higher levels of another substance called C-peptide. But the C-peptide level was so low, it was undetectable. It was a similar story with the second baby: high levels of insulin and very low levels of C-peptide. That usually means just one thing: artificial insulin has been given to the baby.
What we saw in the Letby case was the blood insulin level was very high, the C-peptide was either low or undetectable, To have one high and one undetectable can only mean that insulin has been injected from the outside.
In court, Letby's lawyers didn't argue that the insulin evidence was wrong, even though experts say the test that was used can deliver false results. It's called an immunoassay test.
Basically, the immunoassay test might be mistaking another substance for insulin. And obviously that's not good if you're going to use that result in a criminal prosecution. We always verify the results by a more specific method of analysis. And that was not done in the Letby case. Regarding whether Lucy Letby attempted to murder babies by giving them insulin via the intravenous feed bag, I don't think that has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Using the more precise testing method would have removed all doubt, but our research suggests the immunoassay test is highly reliable, and the lab that did the testing says it's very confident in the results. So isn't it unlikely tests for both babies were wrong?
Two separate lab tests. Doesn't that strongly suggest that they had been poisoned?
The problem is that the tests themselves, that particular type of testing, is quite controversial. And there are a number of experts across the world that say that it's unreliable.
But the error rate for this kind of testing is extremely low. I
don't accept your premise. There are those that are proponents of this type of test, and there are those that are not, that say actually they're unreliable. It is accepted by all sides that there's an error rating, but it's the percentage of the error rating that's not accepted.
It wasn't just the lab results that suggested poisoning. The two infants were also showing symptoms that would be caused by too much insulin. The first infant had glucose levels which were very low. That's not enough sugar in the blood. So did the second baby. Too much insulin would cause low blood sugar levels like this.
The lab results on their own are not the whole story. You need to, from an evidential point of view, link that to the clinical condition of the babies. And in both cases, these babies had extraordinarily low blood sugars over a long period of time.
Nobody saw Lucy Letby poisoning the two babies. The evidence that convicted her is circumstantial. But now we've uncovered new evidence about a third insulin case.
We've seen the medical records of a newborn baby who wasn't included in the trials. They show that Lucy Letby was in charge of his care, and they suggest that he was poisoned with insulin.
The baby was admitted to the neonatal unit in November 2015. At 6:56 a.m, a test showed he had a normal blood glucose level of 3. Lucy Letby took charge at 8 a.m. You can see her initials, LL, on his chart. By 1:54 p.m, the boy's blood glucose had plummeted to 1. It remained low throughout the rest of Letby's shift. An immunoassay test showed his level of C-peptide was low and his insulin was suspiciously high. The official lab report indicated that the insulin level was off the charts. It looks like the boy was poisoned with insulin within hours of Lucy Letby coming on duty.
You don't regard the fact of a third insulin case as a problem for your defence argument?
No, I think the opposite. That baby was later transferred to Alder Hey Hospital, where the second and follow-up tests were done, and it was found that the baby had a particular problem with their insulin regulation.
It's true. The baby had a condition called congenital hyperinsulinism, where the body produces too much insulin naturally. But 4 leading experts have told us it cannot explain such high levels.
It's been said that hyperinsulinism can't explain the levels of insulin seen here, these test results.
Well, it may be said by one expert, but I have other experts that have a completely contradictory view.
The baby survived, but it's not the only time a baby became very unwell when left alone with Lucy Letby. Several collapsed unexpectedly in her care.
The Letby case is full of incidents like these. It's been argued that each one could be explained by other factors, but there's no getting away from the fact that bad things happened time after time when she was around.
And they happened in more than one hospital. Lucy Letby went for training at the Liverpool Women's Hospital in 2012 and 2015. She only worked 33 shifts. We've discovered babies had potentially life-threatening incidents during almost a third of them. It's a high figure, and the police are investigating.
What a head melt this case is.
Because each time you speak to somebody, they're so utterly sure of their position.
The third insulin case, I think that is challenging for the skeptics, and if the analysis coming out of Liverpool Women's Hospital is even half correct, that should leave every confident skeptic in this case feeling uncomfortable and questioning their own position.
This case has become some kind of, I don't know, sign of our times. It's people are obsessed with it, and I understand why. I get it.
I think I said at the start I changed my mind on this case every week, and I think I'm going to keep doing that. There is still just about enough uncertainty for me to continue questioning it.
The man whose evidence helped put Letby away has no such doubts.
What is it about certain people that they are taking the side of a murderer? I think the evidence is overwhelming. I've no doubt at all that she was responsible for the deaths of these babies.
The parents of the babies say they find the continual questioning distressing, but doubts about the prosecution case aren't going away.
I worry that there is reasonable doubt. In fact, in some of the cases, a lot of doubt. And I'm really confused about how they can be so sure.
I don't think that because you can't explain something means that Lucy Letby was guilty of assaulting those babies.
Well, I didn't put her in jail, the jury did. My opinion was that she caused the death of those babies, and I stand by what I said under oath.
Lucy Letby has been jailed for life, but the experts are deeply divided about the medical evidence that put her there.